Welcome back to AMP Ministries, a year in the red. We sort of took a summer off, so we could do some camp stuff. We want to get back involved in it towards the end of the year. So we're glad you're back, glad you're paying attention. And so we don't want to waste any time, we want to get right to it. This week we're going to be taking a look at a parable of the unclean spirit. It's actually found in Luke 11. I'm going to just dive right in and go ahead and read it. It's in Luke 11. 24 through 26. It says, when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest, and finding none. He says, I'll return to my house from which I came. And when he comes, he finds it swept and put in order. Then he goes and he takes with him 7 more spirits, more wicked than himself. And they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. It's pretty interesting, just to give you a little background about what's taking place is Jesus has actually just cast out a demon for a man. Whenever he's cast out this demon, the Pharisees and the religious leaders of that time had actually looked at Jesus and they started telling and saying, hey, the only way he can cast out these demons is if he himself is Satan. And so Jesus sort of explains it a little bit, and then Jesus talks about it like this. Jesus goes into this thing, he says, listen, what is it if you're a king? What kingdom can be divided amongst itself? I mean, if you're a king and you go out and push your kingdom out of a city, you're really not helping yourself. And so what Jesus talks about, if he was Satan, as they claimed, how's that helping Satan's kingdom? It was a real interesting argument that Jesus did, and I started thinking about that and how it would pertain to my life. And to be honest with you, it was pretty tough. Whenever I started looking at this Bible verse, I started thinking, how in the world does this tie back into my life? And I spent some time studying it, and I can tell you where I came. And I'll leave it up to you guys, let you guys tell me what you think as well. But to me, it came back to this. There are many times in my life, many times I've had habits or addictions or things that was going on all throughout my life, and there was a lot of times that I tried to defeat those myself. I tried to sort of just get those out of my life, and I'd put those away and try to defeat those addictions, those habits by myself, and then all of a sudden I couldn't do it on my own. And next thing you know, those addictions and things are back in my life, and they came back worse than whenever they were left. I know a lot of people that are addicts and drug addicts and things like that. And then what ends up taking place is they keep telling me that they can't beat this stuff on their own. They just can't fight that addiction. They just can't fight those habits that they get involved in on their own. And so they stop for a period of time and then they jump right back in it. And so I started thinking, I wonder if that had something to do with what Jesus was talking about. When Jesus talks about that unclean spirit leaves from a man, we need to be very clear and understand that Jesus isn't saying that he never said or indicated that God had come in and cast out this demon. What he indicates here is the demon decided to leave on his own. We actually see in verse 24, when an unclean spirit goes out of a man. He didn't say when it was cast out, but an unclean spirit goes out of a man, that's on his own. He goes off and then he comes back. He decides to go back to his home where he lives. If you can imagine that unclean spirit's living in our hearts. And all of a sudden, whenever that unclean spirit leaves and goes out on its own and it comes back, it's worse. And sometimes, as what Jesus said, he brings 7 more unclean spirits with him. I started thinking, how in the world does that tie into my life? And I recognize that back when I was talking about addiction and habits, there's a lot of things that are in my life that I try to defeat on my own. But there's a spot at the beginning of all this in chapter 11, starting in verse 15 or so, of Luke, of what takes place is Jesus cast out the demon. And whenever Jesus cast out the demon was gone. And so I started comparing that, and I spent some time reading over that and studying it. And I wondered what the difference was if the spirit goes out on its own, where we try to defeat it ourselves, or when God cast out that demon, what does that look like? And so I started thinking about it, and I recognized that every place where Jesus cast out a demon, that demon didn't come back. And so in thinking about that, how it pertained to my life, I went back to saying, hey, you know what? On those things that I'm trying to do away with in my life that I don't have the power on my own to defeat those, what happens if God is the person that defeats that? What if God is the reason that those are defeated and they stay out of my life? And I started thinking about it and started looking back at what Jesus did whenever he's casting out these unclean spirits and demons of what's going on. The demons, those addictions, those hauntings, those things that are going on in people's lives. When Jesus defeats them, they're gone. I know that in my life, whenever I've started looking back at my life, those things that I've actually surrendered to God and said, God, I can't beat this on my own, but you can. Whenever it's gone, it's literally gone. I mean, there's some addictions that immediately in my mind, and we don't have the time, that I start thinking about. The minute I surrendered that to God, I just literally had no desire for it anymore. And whenever it left, and it left on its own, I had tried fighting it before, but then all of a sudden, I couldn't beat it. It just kept coming back. I know a lot of people that relapse from addictions, from drug abuse, drinking, internet pornography, all these things that they've talked to me about, and whenever they try to beat it on their own, they just can't do it. But I've had people tell me whenever they surrender it to God, it's gone for good. So I would challenge you guys this week. There might be something that you're trying to fight in your life. There might be something that you've been trying to fight. There's something that's, you just haven't been able to defeat on your own. And I challenge you this week to just surrender it to God. Let God cast out that thing out of your life and so there is no home for the demon to come back. Let God fill that heart so that whenever the demon comes back, the home is already filled with God. That's the home is our heart. So I would challenge you guys this week about this. Hey, I appreciate you guys really tuning in. If you have any thoughts on this passage, I'll let you know. It's a pretty tough passage for me. I'm really not sure because we start talking about unclean spirits and things like that. And I'm not really sure if we're talking about ghosts or goblins. So if you have any thoughts, post them on our Facebook page. You can email me, ddubois@skycroft.org. You can just get in touch with me through Facebook or Facebook chat or something like that. But let me know what your thoughts are. Hey, I appreciate you guys tuning back in. Hope you guys had an awesome summer. We look forward to talking with you throughout the rest of the year. Again, thanks for tuning in to A Year in the Red. See ya.